So whenever you log into iCEV or you get your email from our customer support team asking you to set up your username and password, you'll just walk through that username and password process, and then you'll go to log in. To log in, you'll just put in your username and password, hit log in, and then that's going to take you into the site. If you've already added courses previously, those will show up on your My Courses page here. However, most people, if you've never used iCEV before, will be taken to this course playlist page where you can select which course playlists you want to add. I'm going to go over here to the business site. So iCEV works on the same type of model as like a Netflix. So rather than just paying per course, you're going to pay for your subscription and then have access to all of our content. So anything that we've currently created or anything that we create in the future while your subscription is still good. So you have access to all of these different course areas on our business, marketing, finance, IT, and media site. To go in and add a course, you just need to select the course you want to add. So let's say we wanted to add this graphic design and illustration course. I'm going to go ahead and just copy that so I don't have to type in that name. But you just make sure that the course is selected by it being green. And then up here in your course title, you're going to go ahead, and I always suggest that people put in their class period that they teach that particular course, just so that shows up for them from an organization standpoint. I'm going to paste in that course name and then do add course. You can add as many or as few courses as you want. Let's go ahead and add one more here. Let's do this entrepreneurship course. I'm going to come here, do third period for it. Paste that in, do add course. And then once I have all of my courses that I want to add, I just need to click on finished. And it will add those to your My Courses page. Your My Courses page is going to serve as a dashboard or kind of your home base for all the courses that you create within iCEV. You've got a few different organization options within this page. So for instance, if you had added these in the wrong order, you can click and drag those to be in the order that you would like. You can also manage your roster from here, view your archived courses, and look at your student certification reports as well. To actually go in and view a course, you're going to click on this view icon that's next to the course name, and that will open up your lessons page. The lessons page is going to contain all of those different lessons that make up the course playlist. So each of these different bars is its own lesson. You can think of the lessons as the chapters of a traditional textbook. You have the ability to customize this course. So if you wanted to change the order of some of the lessons, you can come in, click on customize this course. And then let's just say that we wanted to make design and layout principles the first lesson. We could move and put that there. Or if you wanted internet basics to be the first lesson, you can move those around. You also have the option to search through the library. So if we just wanted to search and see what else is available on photography, we can put that search term in there. You can preview those lessons, see if it is something that you wanted to add. And if it is, you just click on add. It's always going to make it be the very last lesson here in your playlist. Then you can just click and drag wherever you want to put that in your current playlist here. To save any of these changes, you'll just click on finished, and that'll take you back to your My Courses page. Then you can go into the course and be able to start working on adjusting those settings for your students to see, or the lessons that they would see. One thing too, from just a whole course perspective, is you do have the option of, let's say, for instance, you teach this first period digital media course, first period, but you also have a digital media course, sixth period. If you've gone in and customized that course, you can come over here and do copy course, and then just change the name of this course copy. I'm going to delete out that extra text there and do finished. And then it will add an exact replica of that particular course. So that way you're not having to do that customization process twice. So once you're in a course, you can go in and view the lessons and see all of the different materials that we have. One of the things about all of the iCEV lessons is they're going to be either video, PowerPoint, or a combination of both of those medias. So if we wanted to go view this Internet Basics lesson, we click on View, and that's going to open up this individual lesson page. All of the lesson pages are going to be laid out exactly the same. You're going to have your media viewer, so either your video player or your PowerPoint that shows up here in this main area. There's going to be your lesson plan link up here above the viewer. And then there's the instructional materials bar and the interactive materials bar. Instructional materials bar is going to hold all of the different PDF type documents or printable resources. Interactive is going to hold all of those self-graded activities and exercises that students can do through iCEV. And we'll take a closer look at both of those here in a second. Where I always tell people to start when they're looking at a lesson, just so that you can go in and see everything that's included, is by viewing this lesson plan. So if you click on the lesson plan link, it's going to open up a PDF of that lesson plan document. The first page is just going to talk about the media type, the duration, the goals, and the objectives of the lesson, as well as include the Common Core alignments if you are in a Common Core state. If you are not in a Common Core state, we've included horizontal alignments on each of those lesson plans to show how you're impacting those core curriculum areas. Beneath this purple lesson plan heading is where the real meat of the lesson plan lives. This is going to be a day-by-day scope and sequence of how to use the different projects, activities, and assessments in conjunction with those different segments of the video or the PowerPoint. You may have noticed that the duration for this video is about 30 minutes long, but we do break that up across several days. So students aren't just sitting and watching all 30 of those minutes at one period of time. One thing to keep in mind from the lesson plan perspective is this is just our best practices or our suggestions. Feel free to use as much or as little of those as you would like as well. But they are there for you as a resource. Under the green heading is the lesson links, which were just helpful links that we found while creating the curriculum. We've aligned to different CTSO contests, so they have to do with the content covered in the lesson and how those can relate to those different contests. Next, we list our career connections, which career connections are career interviews with industry professionals across the country talking about what they do on a day-to-day basis, how they got to where they are today, and just some hindsight's 2020 and advice for students type interviews. This career connections activity is a great bell ringer or exit ticket type activity so that students can do a little bit of career exploration along with the lesson. To find the actual lessons, to find those interviews, if we go over here to the lessons page and click on this select playlist drop-down menu, if you choose one of those individuals, their career interview is going to open for you to be able to watch. To get back to the media of the lesson, you just click on the lesson title and it will pull back up that video player or the PowerPoint. The last portion of the lesson plan is just going to be a short description of any activities or projects that we've created. So if you run across something when you're reading the lesson plan and just want to learn a little more about it, this is a great place to look for those. Anything that's mentioned within the lesson plan, so if we were looking at this internet how-to manual, all of these different items are going to be located under the instructional materials bar here. So if we click on that, that's going to open up all of those different resources. So any of those activities, or here's that internet how-to manual that we were looking at. So if I click on that and open it up, it's going to have a project sheet with directions that can be shown to students for them to complete that particular project. Other items are the student handouts, which are just additional reading materials that can go along with the lesson. There's going to be a vocabulary handout listing key terms along with definitions for every lesson on iCEV. Additionally, there will be a worksheet, student notes, or key concepts that accompany each lesson, which are just fill in the blank items. This is the printable version, but there is an interactive version that is listed under the interactive materials heading. You're also going to have printable versions of all of the assessments. Those will also be available underneath the interactive heading as well. There's no difference between the printable and the interactive version. Just needed to provide teachers with a way to have that as a printable option in case that was a need of one of their students. A couple of other items that are located underneath this instructional materials heading are the action plan, which if I click on that, the action plan is a student version of the teacher lesson plan. It essentially goes through and puts out the objectives for the lesson, which could be converted into essential questions, and then also talks on a class-by-class basis about what each student should be doing, and lays them out a task list for each day. So that action plan can be really helpful, especially if you're doing some self-pacing throughout remote learning. One other item is this video transcript. If we open it, it's going to open up the closed captions that appear on the video. So this is verbatim a transcript of the audio of the video. So if you have a student who has slow internet speeds at home and maybe having some trouble streaming those videos, you can just make this transcript visible and they would be able to read the content that's included within the video and not fall behind. Another tip that we've heard from a lot of our users is that they all have some English language learners in their classes. And if you take this into a Google Translate, it would translate this transcript into the language that the student's more comfortable in so that they could read through and have access to that content as well. So both of those, so your action plan and your video transcript, are located underneath this instructional materials heading when you click on it. You also have the ability to share these with your Google Classroom and make things visible or hidden from your students by checking those different checkboxes. There will be some checkboxes you can't check. Most of the time, those are the answer keys or the rubrics that the students really don't need access to. So those checkboxes just stay unchecked regardless of whether or not you try to check them. To take a look at the interactive materials, if we click on that bar, it's going to open up all of the different exercises that we have. So you have your matching vocabulary exercise, where students can go in and match the term with the definition for it. There's also, I'm going to go ahead and leave that. There's also going to be interactive versions of all of the worksheets, like I mentioned. And then you're going to have interactive versions of all of the assessments. These non-green starred assessments are going to be more of a 5-question check for understanding type of question, whereas the green starred assessments are going to be longer, 10 to 20 questions and a little more rigorous than those shorter assessments that precede them. So you'll notice that there's a lot of different checkboxes and settings that you can change within the interactive pieces. Essentially, this just gives you total control over what your students are seeing on their student license. There's several different columns that we'll talk about, but I'm going to start with this visible to students column. Just like with the printable items that we talked about previously, if that checkbox is checked, that means that those items are visible to the student on their student license. If it's unchecked, that means that they cannot see them on their student license. Next is this show details column. Essentially, show details can be thought of as showing the answers after a student has completed an exercise or an assessment. So for instance, if I went through on my student license and I completed this vocabulary activity, right now when I finished, because that is unchecked, all I would see is the score that I received on that exercise. Whereas for the worksheet, whenever I finish, because this is checked, I would see the correct answers to all of the questions on it. So show details is essentially, just like I said, showing the answers after a student has completed an item within iCEV. If you don't want them to be able to view that, just be sure to uncheck that checkbox. The next column is this attempt threshold over here. This is going to allow you to specify the number of times a student can do a particular item. So for instance, by default, all of them are going to be blank like these assessments are. But I've gone in up here and added in that I think that my students should be able to do the vocabulary twice. And then I've set in a threshold of 1 for all of these other worksheets. One thing from an attempt threshold standpoint is if you set it at once and you have the show details checked, the students just get to see those answers at the end. If you have it set for more than once and those show details are still checked, I could go through, do the vocabulary activity, get some of them wrong, see the correct answers, and because I can take it again, go back in, put in the correct answers, and then receive a 100 or receive a better grade. So if you do have multiple attempts set, just be sure to uncheck that show details if that's something that you're concerned about with your students. The deactivate on date column just allows you to set deadlines for when you want different things to be deactivated on the student site. So if we wanted to come in here and change this to be due, let's say next Wednesday, we could just come in, put this there, and then be able to have that show up from a deactivate on date standpoint from that date. Show on grades report just means that it's going to show up in your iCEV gradebook. If you don't have a student doing, or you don't have your students doing a particular item, you can just uncheck that and that just removes that column. So it just kind of helps keep that gradebook a little more organized. So those are all of the different setting options that you have within the interactives. You do have the ability, so there is this share with classroom option. If you click on that and you've got your account synced to your Google Classroom, it will let you share any of those items with your Google Classroom with your students. So there's a lot of checkboxes. So if you wanted to be able to mass check or uncheck or change any of those settings all at once, if you go back out to your course page, beneath the settings heading are where all of those different visibility settings are going to be located. So anything from the lesson and activity settings. So if you don't want them to be able to view those assessments or the activities, the answers. So if you want to uncheck the show details for all of them, you can just do hide all, and that automatically unchecks show details on everything. Same thing with the printable activities. If you click hide all, that makes it where all of those are blank, and then you can just check the ones you want as you're ready for them. And the last one here is the PowerPoint and video. This one's important because if you go in and look at each of these, above that video viewing area or the PowerPoint is going to be this little blue checkbox. If that checkbox is checked, that means the student can see that video when they're logged in. A lot of teachers, if students are taking assessments or doing things that they really want to know what the students know and not let them be able to go back in and view a portion of the lesson, they'll just uncheck that checkbox for that period of time. Once everyone's finished with that, they can check that checkbox and it turns it back on for them. The other option you have from a visibility standpoint is if you don't want your students to view every single one of these lessons, if you just want them to view the lessons that you're wanting them to work on. Beneath lesson visibility here, you can click on show settings, and that's going to put a drop-down menu next to each one of those lessons. By default, they're all visible to students. You can go in and manually change them all to be hidden, or you can just click hide all next to lesson visibility there. Click OK, and that's going to change them to all be hidden from students. And then you just have to go in and make the ones visible that you would like. You also have the option to make them visible on a certain date. So if we wanted this to show up on Thursday, we could just set that to show up on Thursday. Or if you're ready for something to show up on Monday, you can have it set up. So you can really go through and build a schedule of when those different lessons would show up for the students. Once you have all of your settings set the way that you would like, you can go in and enroll your students into the course. To do that, you'll just click on this Invite Students link. And that's going to pull up the registration guide for your students. All of the students will visit this icevonline.com/register. They're all going to need the same registration code. That registration code is unique to the course. not to the student. So they would put that in, fill out this form, creating their username and password, their forgot password question, and hitting submit. As soon as they hit submit, they're able to log in and see what you've shared with them from an assignment standpoint. To see if your students are logged in or who all has registered, you can click on this Manage Roster icon here. So you can see that I've gone in and registered my student, and here's my name, here's my username. If I need to reset my password because I forgot it, or you reset your student's password, you just do that there, hit reset. They can automatically log in, so there's no downtime. You have the option to move a student. So if they switch class periods into another iCEV class, you can move them into that class. You also have the option to remove the student, which will remove them from your roster and also free up your enrollment slots. This is also a good place to look in this green bar for how many enrollment slots you have. So right now I have 5 and one of them is in use. So I have 4 more that I could register students with for this particular account that I'm using. So let's go take a look at that student license just so you all can see what that looks like. So here's my student that's logged or that is enrolled in this first period digital media course. If I want to go into that course, I just click on it. You'll notice this layout's very similar to the teacher version. To go in and view the lesson, you just click on View Lesson, and that's going to open up all the items that have been made visible to me. So you can see that some of those worksheets that were unchecked don't show up here. The other thing that's nice is if you do have an attempt threshold set, it is going to tell the students how many attempts they have. If you want to go in as a student and see how you did after you finished, you can click on the summary. You remember the vocabulary had the show details unchecked, so the answers do not show up. It is just going to show me my score and my percentage score. But if show details was checked, if I click on this worksheet here, it would show me my total score and percentage, as well as the answers to that particular exercise or assessment. You'll see that this one is grayed out and I can't click on it. That's because one of attempts has been taken. So there's no way that I can go back in unless my teacher changes that to where there's 2 attempts for me to go back in and take it. I can go back in and do the vocabulary again because there's still another attempt that I can do. I didn't set any attempt thresholds for those assessments, so that's why there's nothing showing up in that particular column right now. And then here is all of the other instructional materials that are available to me. So if I needed to read that video transcript, I could click on that to read it. If I needed to read through a student handout, or if I was assigned this project to do, I could get to all of my instructions underneath this instructional materials heading. From a student perspective, if I was a student that was enrolled in more than one course, and after I've finished enrolling in my first one, to add a second course, I just need to click on this Add New Course or Certification. And then I'll put in that new registration code here, hit Submit, and then it's going to add that other course that I'm enrolled in. I can click on it, and it would open up those lessons which were made visible to me in that particular course. A few things that can show up in a course on iCEV are the standards alignment document, which that only shows up if we've correlated that particular course to state or national standards and have that document that lives on iCEV so that you can see which standards are met by which lesson in the playlist. There's also the special population strategies document, which just outlines a few different teaching strategies for using iCEV with special populations, as well as some explanations of accommodations and modifications, and just some different tips and tricks from our users that we've heard. So both of those will always appear right above that students heading in the lessons. You also have the option to create your own assessment within iCEV. So if you wanted to create a semester type test, so let's say you wanted to pull questions from multiple of the iCEV lessons that you've taught, you can click on Create Assessment, put a title in there, choose the lessons that you've done so far. So let's say that we've done these first 4 here. And then I'm going to click Next once I've got all those created. Then I'm going to click Find Items. And then this is going to pull every single interactive question that exists for those lessons within iCEV, whether that's a matching vocabulary or a multiple choice assessment or a labeling activity. All of those are going to be pulled. If you just want to pull from the assessment questions, you can search assess, or if you just wanted vocabulary, you could just search vocab and then click on the search icon. And then it will search through all of those questions. You can preview the questions by clicking on that little eyeball icon. And then once you found the ones that you want to add, just go through and click on them. Just going to add a few here so we can take a look. Once you're ready to get those added, just click on the Add Items. Once they're successfully added, you can go back to the dashboard here. Preview those questions. So this is all of the ones that we added. And then once you're ready to save, just click on Save. And then one thing that's really important is as soon as you click Save, it's going to add it to your My Courses page, but it's also going to automatically make that visible to students. So you're going to want to make sure that you uncheck that visible to students checkbox pretty quickly if you don't want your students to accidentally be able to see that sooner than you're ready for them. You also have the option to deactivate this on date, just like with the other interactives. You can show it on your grades report. You have the option to go back in and edit the test, copy the test, or let's say we just don't really need this anymore. We can click on Remove, and that gets rid of that test that you had created. See if we come back up in here, I did want to show you something that we've got that is new, and that's our new lesson plan layout that we're going to be using on all of our new lessons that we create. It's just a little bit more streamlined of a version of the current lesson plan that we have in most of our lessons. Still going to have your goal, description, objectives, but we have gone in and done a little bit of a class overview. So telling you exactly what video segments or PowerPoint segments you're going to be watching, along with other documents you might be needing. We've put in daily essential questions related to the lesson, added in bell ringers and exit tickets, put the little eye icon to show that there are interactive components with this, and just point those out to make sure that you're taking advantage of that self-grading option. And then probably the biggest change is underneath this project description, there's going to be accommodations, modifications, and extensions present if those are available for that particular project or activity. So just offering a few more instructional strategies throughout the lesson plan as well. So I'm going to log out because I think the only thing that we haven't talked about is the course grades report. So I'm going to log back into this other account that has my student account associated with it. And so if you wanted to view your students' grades, so they've completed some work, you can go into the course and then click on Course Grades Report. There's a few settings you have to specify before you can run the report. The first is choosing who you want to show up on the report. You want all of your students, or if you just want one of your students. So you click on that individual student's name, run the report, and that could be great for like a progress report or just a checkup on where that individual student's doing. I'm going to leave it at all students, and that would list all students if there was more than just me in that particular class. You've got several different report modes to choose from. First score is only going to show the first time the student took it. Last score, the last. Average would average all times. Highest would be the highest. All scores is going to show each time they took it, as well as the score that they received. So I'm going to choose all scores. The percentage mode or item mode is just dependent upon how you need to see your grades for your grade book. I'm going to leave it at percentage. And then you have the ability to set a start date and an end date. So if you were doing it within a 6 weeks time period, an 8 weeks time period, or if you wanted to set it for a whole semester, you can just come in, put a start date, leave the end date open. And then to run the report, you just click on View Report. And that's going to show up with those different grades that the student has made. If you want to view that particular activity that the student did, you can just click on it and it's going to open up, show you their score. And then if you scroll down, it's going to show you a summary of what they did or what they got correct. So you can see that this student, this is the question that they missed within this particular exercise. Because we chose all scores, if I scroll over here, you can see that this particular assessment was taken multiple times. So you can see the first time that it was taken, the student received an 80%, whereas the second time they received 100. So this could be an instance of the show details not being checked and the student rushing back through and getting 100 a second time. So that's a good way if you're trying to look for that. You can find that by just making sure your all scores option is checked. You also have the ability to download this report. And by downloading it, it's just going to create an Excel spreadsheet with all of these grades in it. The spreadsheet can be imported into most gradebook programs, or a lot of teachers say it's just easier to copy and paste out of an Excel spreadsheet than it is from this particular platform that we have within our gradebook.